Is this on? Hey, good morning, everyone. How's it going? Or good afternoon. Hey, how's it going? Welcome to RITSEC this week. If you guys could go ahead and please sign in at signin.ritsec.club, that'd be greatly appreciated.
Then you don't get pizza. Yeah, that's good.
All right, we have a lot of announcements to get through, some of which were just recently added, so we're going to get started. So, announcements. CBTC. You want to talk about this? Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Woo! Yeah! All right.
Wait.
Oh. So, yeah. CPTC, which is one of the many competitions that are going around. You guys probably remember it from first semester. Well, sign-ups for next year are starting right about now. So if you want to sign up and start thonking or start trying out for the team, then go on over to the amazing computing security office and just be like, boom, I'd like to be on this list. And they'll be like, okay. And then they put you on a list. And then eventually, you'll get an email. And that email will describe what the next steps are. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Nick. So, next up, we have B-Sides. It's tomorrow, and we have one of our own actually presenting. Jack, you're presenting, correct? Yep, Jack is presenting. What's your presentation on? Oh, your rootkit? Yeah, Jack will be talking about rootkits and Linux, so that's pretty exciting. So definitely go support him. He'll be 2:30 at track number 2. But you guys can still go buy tickets. I believe it's on Eventbrite. So go ahead and check it out and go, because there's a lot of cool talks, including Jack's. So. And Jack just say is a free ticket, so if you're looking to, if you don't have the money or you need a ticket, let Jack know. I'm sure there's other people floating around that need a free ticket as well, or have free tickets, so definitely reach out to people. So, RITSEC. Is Chris here? No? Okay. So I guess I'll just vouch for it and do a quick little shout out. But yeah, RITSEC is coming up. Do we have white team signups at all, or any? Okay, we have no. I don't. Yeah. Okay. So RITSEC is coming up. So be on lookout for any like white team signups, because we definitely need the help. But yeah, that will be coming up April, I believe, April 20th. Yeah. So it starts April 20th. So if you're looking at the blue team, white team, be on the lookout for signups for that. Coming in really fast. And now, we can announce our web admin. Micah, do you want to announce our web admin? Oh, you want me to do the honor? I don't know if I. All right. So can I get a drum roll, please, for the announcement of the web admin? And the winner is Matt Brown. So congratulations, Matt. You want to come up and say a few words?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't know how this work, but
You're just talking to that and that.
Yeah.
So.
Hey, what's up? It looks like I'll be the web admin. Spider-Man's pretty cool. Looking forward to the new movie coming out.
Do you have any words about the website we sent you, or website?
Their uptime will be consistent.
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 Like consistently low or consistently high?
High.
Yeah, is it consistent what it is now?
Pretty much. Improvements are coming.
Okay. Well, thank you, Matt.
You'll see. Will there be more meetings?
To be fair, we hired a web admin, not a public speaker, so just kidding, Matt. So, anyways, yeah, congratulations, Matt. Welcome aboard. We're really happy to have you, and we're really excited to see what work you can do for the club in terms of web. So, thank you guys, or thank you for all the applicants, especially too. We appreciate you guys coming out and applying. So, certainly last but not least, I don't think we have any more announcements. That was the last one, I hope. Let's meet the sponsors. So we want to definitely give a big shout out to our platinum sponsors. Thank you very much. Can we get a round of applause for our platinum sponsors? Thank you. couldn't be here today if it wasn't for them. So thank you, platinum sponsors. And then our gold, silver, and bronze, can clap it up for them as well. Yeah, big round of applause. Let's see the hands. All right, and so I guess we're gonna jump right into education stuff. So let me get my mic set up. What? Oh, yeah, I will. Yeah. Ooh, wow. Okay, so without further ado, can I get a drum roll, please, for this week's topic? It's like drum rolls. This one's not very enthusiastic. Okay, so without further ado, Blue Team Windows, me, yay, I don't have to leave. What? Probably not, no. Yeah, I'm really good at networking. Joe, just ask Joe. He's taught me everything he knows. Not really. But anyway, so we're going to be talking about Blue Team Windows. Who's here has like Blue Team or done a competition and like did Windows, main Windows? Matt, you did? Awesome. Anyone else? Loudon? Yeah, I know you have. I know you have as well. Okay, well, that's good. So honestly, if you are, going to be blue teaming for RITSEC, I really think you would want to be on Windows because Windows blue teaming is a lot easier than Linux. Yeah, Linux red blue teaming, in my opinion, is way harder just because of the fact that there's so many places that red team can hide and all the back doors, while Windows, it's just like really straightforward, right? Like your Windows already has so many built-in features to help you secure the system. And today I'm just gonna be talking about like how you can utilize those and how we can, effectively blue team with already built-in features. And honestly, like the first one to start off with is a firewall, because if you know how to use a firewall, you're already like halfway there to securing your system. Because if red team can't talk out, then they're not going to be able to really do anything in your box. So yeah, the firewall is going to be your best friend throughout the entire competition. If you know how it works and you know it pretty well and you know the commands like the back of your hand, you're going to be good to go. So there's two different types of firewalls. There's the Windows XP and like Windows 2003 version, which is just the basic firewall. It's not really great and it's not really that good. But if you're on an XP or 2003, heaven forbid, that's what you got, so you're kind of stuck with it. But in Vista onwards, they implemented a advanced firewall, which is for Vista onwards. So it's a lot more powerful, and you'll see like in the next couple slides that it has a lot more features and has a lot more powerful capabilities that allow you to kind of really restrict and give like fine-grained control over what you want going out on your network. So yeah, and the advanced firewall the general features is the the ability to log, ability to create rules around program, and again, it gives you fine-grained control over what's going in and out of your computer. And I believe like compared to Linux, I don't believe IP tables has the ability to just allow like certain programs out. So that's like a big plus on the Windows side, and we can really use that to our advantage. And I think, I don't know, does IP tables allow you to like go to a specific IP? Like, can you specify like it does? Okay, that's pretty cool. I didn't know that. So. But Windows can do that too, and it can specify a lot more options, so we'll see that here in a sec. And yeah, when you're blue teaming, you want to be able to create scripts, your firewall script, like on your desktop or wherever, so you can just run it in case your firewall rules get reset or something happens to your firewall, right? And that's what we do for like CCDC. When I was up in Vermont last weekend, that's what we did. We wrote like firewall scripts, we ran it, and that way we always have them and we can transfer them over to other hosts on the network if we need to like establish their firewall rules as well. So, all right, so hopefully you guys can see that text. It might be a little small, but this is like the example of the basic firewall and some of the commands. So, excuse me. The commands here, the first one, what it's doing, the NetSH firewall set op mode. This is just enabling the firewall for all the profiles. And so with the firewall, there's 3 different profiles. There's Brandon, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's public, private, and domain firewall rules, or firewalls. And each of these just correspond to basically what the NIC was set at the time of like when the network was found by Windows. And so I don't know if you guys know, but like when you guys get a pop-up, when you like plug in a network cable or whatever, it's gonna say, oh, we found this network. Do you wanna look for other Windows hosts or other like, I don't know, it gives you a pop-up on the side in like Windows 10, and you can say yes or no to it. That's basically if you say yes, your type will be set to private, and if you say no to that pop-up, it'll be set to public. And again, that just corresponds to the profiles. And I believe if you're connected to a domain, like a domain environment, then your nick type is set to domain. That's kind of a bad explanation. Hopefully that made sense. But essentially, you want to enable all the profiles and set the firewall rules for all the profiles. So it doesn't really matter what thing your nick is set to. So going back to the commands, the first command just enables all the firewall rules. And then here we see the next two commands are just enabling LDAP. So it's LDAP and LDAP SSL. And you can see the syntax is pretty simple for the basic, and you'll see it for the advanced firewall. It's the kind of the same deal. It's really simple, really straightforward, easy to understand, easy to read. So it's really nice and really helpful for looking through and auditing firewalls, even if you're new to Windows. So, then this is I don't have a title on this slide, but this is the advanced firewall. So here we can see the first command. All we're doing is setting all the profiles, again, equal to just blocking all the traffic by default. So when something comes in, there's not a rule for it that allows it in. It's just like dropped. And then next, we're allowing an actual program out. So in this case, the second command is actually just allowing Firefox out. So this is an example of allowing like a specific program to communicate. And why you would allow Firefox out is so you can browse traffic without having to allow 80 and 443. So here's like a scenario, right? Red team's on your box, and they have HTTP beacons calling back to like a web server and grabbing commands. If you have firewall rules set up and you're allowing 80 and 443 out for like web traffic and for you to like surf the web, not that you're like surfing the web, but like Googling stuff, right? Those beacons are going to be getting out, and they're going to be able to like call back and get the commands they need to run, and then your system, you're just going to get more and more down a bad track with red team. So if you allow, say, Firefox out instead of just allowing 80 and 443, now red team can't get out from their beacons unless they're injected into Firefox, or they they named their program Firefox and have it in that specific location, which they probably don't. So that's going to be a lot more restrictive and be a lot more helpful for you as a blue teamer, because then you have more fine-grained control over what is getting out and what's not. So yeah, and the next rule, same deal. It's just allowing Firefox to go out. Then the rule after that, the two rules on the bottom for the AD client, just allow you to connect to DNS. So the direction's in and out, so it's allowing you to query DNS on whatever DNS server you have in your network. So that's the advanced firewall. Again, pretty simple, pretty straightforward, nothing too crazy. And then here's a GUI example. I always recommend writing scripts because the GUI is a lot more cumbersome to work with. And as you can see, there's a lot going on, a lot of options, and a lot to look at. I think the GUI is great for auditing your firewall rules and looking at what firewall rules are on your box, because sometimes red team might put in an allow all rule, and they might have a script or something in the background putting allow all rules. So it's always good to look back at the GUI and be like, okay, are these the firewall rules that I originally established? Because if they're not, then, and there's an add rule that allows all traffic out, then all these rules are useless, right? What you did is not really going to do anything. So here's an example of a Windows client. And then you see DNS. I have traffic going to specific IPs. So again, really fine-grained control. And if you take anything from this presentation, please, please, please do firewall rules. Funny story, I don't know, it's Connor Phillips here. Philip, you can speak to how good firewall rules are from yesterday, can't you? Okay. So yeah, yesterday we had CDT, right? And so we were able to get red team out pretty much. I'm sure there's still some persistence, but we got mostly out of our network just by firewall rules, literally not even changing passwords. So if that doesn't speak to how powerful firewall rules are, then yeah, they're really good. So definitely take some notes, and when you're preparing for RITSEC, definitely write some scripts. Ben, I saw you had your hand raised.
You're going to talk about how you can apply firewall rules to applications.
Yeah, I already mentioned that.
All right, I walked in late.
No problem. But thank you for the suggestion. I appreciate it. All right, so moving on. CMD. CMD is going to be super helpful, and I think, people are always asked, oh, should I learn PowerShell for blue teaming? Should I learn CMD? What should I do? I always think it's great to start with CMD, because if, again, you won't see the older systems like 2003 and XP much anymore. especially in like RITSEC and if you're going to UB, stuff like that, you won't see them there. But you know, if you do, you're really going to only be stuck with CMD, so it's really great to know command prompt and know some of the commands. So if you're given the like basic shell, or maybe if they disable PowerShell, if you know CMD, you have access to, you still have access to like all the system information, and you know how to like quickly perform tasks on the system. So just running through some commands here. Netstat is going to be, you know, same thing as Linux. It's going to be able to show you network connections. I believe the syntax for, instead of like, actually we won't talk about flags right now, but task list is another great way to show like processes. So instead of going through, you know, like the task manager, you can use task list, which will provide a good amount of information. Task kill is just like kill. Net user will show you all the users on the system. Net local group will show you all the local groups, and you can see all the members. Net group will audit domain groups. You can do the same with net user to audit domain users, but you have to pass a /domain flag with net user. SCH tasks, scheduled tasks, that's just, you know, going to interface with scheduled tasks and show you all the scheduled tasks in the system. And system info will just provide you like a high level overview of like the operating system you're on, so you can know like what patches and stuff are enabled on the host. So moving from CMD, right? And CMD is going to be your like raw information. System internal tools are going to be like tools you want to get ASAP if you're blue teaming Windows, because of how powerful they are. They give you like really good deep insight into processes on your system. There's a tool specifically for persistence, which we'll talk about in a little bit, but it gives you like checks for like really easy persistence methods on Windows that, you know, can really screw your system up if you let them persist. We also have like tools to like see if stuff is writing to the registry key, if threads, processes like killing threads or spawning threads, and also like a better version of Netstat. So starting off with Process Explorer, this is the one most people are familiar with. And it has a lot of pretty colors and it's very pretty to look at. But overall, it's going to give you like a lot deeper of a idea, or a deeper look into like what processes are running on your system. And especially like in Windows 7 and upwards, you're going to have a lot more like Windows processes and a lot more processes to look at. So having Process Explorer is going to make it 100 times easier. So again, like the things you can do is you can look at threads for individual processes, the TCP connections that a process is making, which is super good if like you think a process is injected and is like has beacons or is calling out to a server. You can look at the privileges. You can run like a strings in the binary on the fly. Like this tool is really great. So you know, and there's other things you can do as well, which I don't know if yeah, I do talk about that. But you know, just starting off with this, like after you know, establish file rules and like change your passwords, right? Process Explorer is usually what I go to, and I just start like looking through and seeing like, okay, is there any like obvious malware, right? That like is named like backdoor.exe or like malware.exe, because sometimes red team will do that and they'll just be like, okay, well here's some low hanging fruit for you that you just need to, you know, get rid of quick before they use it to like add users or whatever. So another thing you can, a really quick thing you can do as well in Process Explorer is verifying image signatures. And so what this is, if you go to like options and then verify image signatures at the top there, it'll basically go through and it'll add a column to basically check the certificate that the binary was signed for. And if the binary is not signed, or it's signed with a cert that's like doesn't have a proper like certificate authority on the box, basically it will pop up as an invalid cert, or like it doesn't have a signature. And so that's usually a really bad sign. So if it's not signed by Microsoft or by a company you trust or know, usually it's malicious, or most of the time it's malicious. So that's usually like a really easy like gimme to get a lot of like red team malware that's not signed. Another thing you can do in Process Explorer, which is really helpful, again, here's like the detailed look at like the processes. So you can, there's lots of tabs, lots of information for you guys to look through. But sometimes it's really good. You can actually suspend processes in Process Explorer. So you can actually send it like a suspend signal. And so suspend is much better than kill, because if you suspend a process, then it's not going to be able to actually like restart itself. So it's very hard. Like red team actually has to have something specifically in place to like fix a suspended process rather than kill, because kill, you can tell the process is not running on the system, but suspend, it's still there, but it's just not doing anything. So it's a lot harder to act on that. So always suspend processes before you kill them. But yeah, that's Process Explorer, very powerful tool. It's kind of like the first thing, like if I'm at CCDC or I'm like blue teaming wherever, it's like the first thing I'm gonna look at when I'm like on a system after I've done like my firewall rules and changed my passwords and everything. So auto runs. Auto runs is kind of like the second tool, like the second tool I go to, like my bread and butter tool set that I'm always going to go to, because it'll detect most of the common registry attacks, like the really powerful, like startup on, run on boot or run on user logon, like those sort of registry keys, those always get detected by auto runs. So as well as those registry keys, it'll detect WMI, which can be used for backdoors. I think we talked about that in the advanced Windows talk. Schedule tasks, services, it'll give you better insight into some services, and I believe just a ton of persistence methods that like red teamers will use. It actually detects these, even some really advanced ones too. I know like if you guys have heard of like the app init or app DLL attacks, I think it's detected by auto runs as well. So really powerful, and it's kind of like a really easy tool to use. You literally just look and uncheck boxes. So you can't really go wrong with auto runs, and it's, as long as you, the biggest thing with Process Explorer and auto runs is knowing what is normal and what's not. Because if you know what like a normal auto runs on like a normal system that's not infected looks like, it's really easy to pick out like the bad stuff. So that's also important as well, because if you're just going through and unchecking services or killing processes and suspending them, you're gonna have a bad time and you're probably gonna break your system. But if you know what's normal and what's not, and you are accurately killing and deleting stuff from auto runs, that's gonna be great, and you're gonna be able to clean out your system really easily and really hurt red team from the beginning. You can do this all in like the first hour or two, so it's great. So yeah, here's what auto runs look like. Again, auto runs looks like. Again, you can literally just go through and uncheck boxes on stuff you don't want active. So it's really like brain dead easy. Like you can't, it's almost impossible to screw up. Yeah, Process Monitor is another tool in the System Terminal suite. Excuse me, my voice is kind of cracking up here. But it allows you to kind of monitor like actions on the file system and on the system itself. So an example of this is like, we actually saw this at CCDC. We used Process Monitor to actually check like a web directory that was constantly being overwritten. And so we actually had like filters in Process Monitor in place, which I think I have a picture somewhere. No, I don't. That's silly. So yeah, we had a filter in place to basically look in this directory and see what kept like creating files in this directory. So we're able to like use Process Monitor to like detect red team's malware through like actions the malware was taking. So Process Monitor is really good for that. It's kind of like more of a special use case though, and it's not something I would just like run and like look at, because there's so much traffic and so much file creation and thread creation on a system that it's hard to really use on a like every time you turn on the system or every time you're blue teaming. So it's kind of an as needed basis. And then the last big system terminals tool is TCP view, and looking at it, it's just like a better version of Netstat, really. It's just a GUI version of it. It is nice because it gives you a lot more readable information, and sometimes with CMD it can be hard to actually like full screen it and like read all the information accurately. But for the most part, it's just kind of the same deal, so they go hand in hand. Unfortunately, like if you're on a domain controller and you're like the domain controller guy, TCP view is not going to be super useful because the whole thing will be just flooded with like DNS.exe from like clients and other services making DNS requests. So TCP view and really Netstat becomes really unusable. So it's really hard to look for beacons and connections going out on the domain controller with TCP view, but it's still great on clients. So Active Directory. Sorry. So I was actually, when we did, we have a CCC presentation later. I'll talk more about what I did at CCDC, but I was on the domain controller. So if you're on the domain controller, sucks to be you because it's way harder than clients. So with Active Directory, a lot gets thrown into the mix and a lot more things that you have to worry about. Specifically, you now have access to everyone's system, which is great, good and bad, because you can obviously remotely connect to any system on the network with your domain admin accounts. But now you have to be weary because Red Team can also do that. So if they get persistence on your box, now they have persistence on everyone else's box. So that's a problem. And also, if you're making firewall rules, this is a big problem because you can actually lock everyone out of their box if you don't have great firewall rules and you're not allowing like certain ports out, because then they won't be able to connect to you and actually authenticate with you. Because remember, in a domain, if a client's connected to the domain, to be able to log into a domain like account, you actually have to authenticate with the domain controller. So it's something to keep in mind. So if you're on the domain controller, you have a lot more on your plate. It's not as simple as like the clients are. And yeah, you have new users and groups, so like the domain admin and enterprise admins, if one of those domain admin accounts gets popped and Red Team has access to it, that's a big uh-oh, that's a big yikes. You're gonna have trouble with that. As well as like golden ticket attacks too become viable because now they can create golden tickets and stay persistent on your network. Yeah, so if you're on the domain controller, what do you focus on then, right? Because you have so much on your plate now that was added. Like, what do you do? I always say, take your time. That's like my biggest advice. But, just making sure you have really good firewall rules and really strict firewall rules that, making sure clients can still authenticate while not allowing like unnecessary services like RDP. For the domain controller, you really should never be RDP'd into it. So that's like one piece of advice is to never allow RDP to the domain controller. Always auditing your domain admins and enterprise admins, making sure like new users, like a Red Team user isn't added to that group is very good. And auditing group policy, because if you say like spin up a new box, right, and you want to add it to your domain, if you don't have group policy cleaned out or you didn't audit group policy at all, and they put persistence in group policy, then guess what, that new box that's like all clean and fresh that you thought was nice and clean, and you add it to the domain, it's now infected as well, and it has pretty much all the persistence that they put in group policy on it. So it's really important to audit group policy before you start connecting hosts to the domain, like fresh hosts. And secondary services, what I mean by this is, creating backups of other services. So like creating a secondary domain controller is an awesome strategy because if Red Team takes down your first one, you can just fail over the secondary one and you lose literally no downtime, and it's very nice. We implement this strat in CCDC a lot with like, having backup services and having, services migrate to different hosts. It's really useful. And, because a lot of times, for example, if they have like a driver or something on the box and you can't find the driver, right? Because kernel drivers are really hard to find. It's better to just migrate off than to like spend your entire time looking for it, because you're just going to be wasting your time because chances are it's going to be really hard to find. It's going to be signed by a legitimate cert. So like, just way easier to migrate off and just call it a day than to waste your time looking for the malware. So yeah, definitely having repudiation there is really great. So group policy, as I said, you got to make sure it's clean before you add it to the domain or add a computer to the domain. But as you can see, there's 2,000 plus settings in group policies. So that's like a lot to look through and a lot to think about. But Windows does make it really easy for going through the GUI. They have like a whole thing where you can just basically click through and see all the changes that the group policy specifically makes. So just taking a look through that is really easy. But besides like persistence for Red Team, group policy can also be used to really help you guys as blue teamers. So for example, like password policy, improving password policy, making sure that Red Team can't just you aren't able to just do like a really simple password. That's really useful. That's also obviously useful for like day-to-day actions as well. Also denying like specific logons, so like certain computers are on the network. Like one thing, that's like best practice always for domain controllers is to deny network logons to the domain controller so people can't like RDP or like WinRM to it. So that's really useful and something that can really help you save your domain controller in the long run. And those are just some examples. You can do like privilege separation as well through group policy. So again, that's super useful stopping Red Team because and that's like using UAC as a security boundary to help stop Red Team. So while a lot of these things, again, can be used for persistence on Windows. They can also be used for good and really help you out to kind of keeping your computers secure. So yeah, here's an example, like here's what group policy kind of looks like in the GUI. Yeah, be careful with some of the settings, because if you're not careful, you can lock yourself out. So process injection. I talk about this because this isn't really super relevant in the real world, but for blue team, red team competition is absolutely relevant. So a lot of teams, or a lot of red teams, using like Cobalt Strike or PowerShell Empire or like Metasploit, will a lot of the times use process injection to stay hidden on your system. So process injection, those who aren't familiar, you're essentially taking the code of a running process and just like, or all the threads of a process and just like slapping in under another process. Because remember, processes are just containers for threads, and threads do all the running. So if you just like spin up another thread of your of your program, right, in our process, you can like look like you're in a completely separate process. So this is really good because for red team, because it can be really, really hard to find them and find their malware running, because threads don't really give you a lot of information on what they're doing. And looking through every individual thread in the system is going to take you, all day. It's going to take you like 24 hours, right? So it's kind of unrealistic to do that. So with process injection, the best way to remediate this is to, again, firewall rules and not allowing them to connect out. So even though they might have be injected into your system and might have threads running all around your system, if those threads can't talk out to whatever they're trying to do, then it's not going to matter. The other good way to kind of handle process injection, if you think you solved the problem or found all our malware and they're still injected in their system, is just to restart your computer. Because injected processes and threads don't actually aren't persistent, and as soon as you restart your computer, they're just all going to disappear. And if they don't get re-injected, then you're good to go. So, but yeah, firewall rules and restarting your computer periodically is the best way to kind of deal with that. And kind of most of these things, honestly, is firewall rules. If they can't talk out, you're fine. So, but wrapping everything up, so I kind of threw a lot at you guys. So now for the 5-minute plan, right? So now you're thinking, wow, I have all this information. How do I act upon this, right? Through firewall rules, all these tools, system internal tools, all these techniques that red team is going to use. What the heck do I do to kind of handle all this? Well, here's some basic steps, right? This shouldn't be your 5-minute plan, but this is an overview of a really basic 5-minute plan for Windows, right? And this is kind of the order that, in my opinion, that's worked for me, and you guys should kind of use if you're new to blue teaming Windows, or you're going to be first timing at RITSEC. So the first thing to do is sticky keys. Every red team likes to do this, and basically sticky keys is pressing Shift 5 times on the lock screen and getting a shell. And if they have RDP access, then they can do this to get persistence without logging in. So I always like to when I get on the system, press Shift 5 times, see if there's sticky keys, and if nothing pops up, okay, great, that's awesome. There's no persistence there. So then I like to log in, and the first thing I do when I'm logged in is I change the password, right? Just change your passwords, because that's gonna delay red team to RDP into your system, whatever, and they're gonna have to change the password back to what they want. And they might still have persistence at that point, but whatever. So changing the password, always good, and creating a backup account. This is huge, and I've learned my lesson the hard way with this, is always create a backup account. So in case they lock you out of the main administrator account, you can get back in with your backup account, because usually red team won't change the password of the accounts you create. They're only going to change the default account passwords. So definitely create a backup account, make it administrator, and create a secure password with that. After that, I always create some basic firewall rules. So what I'll do is I'll usually, if I'm RDP'd in, I'll allow my RDP connection and ping, and that's it. If I'm not RDP'd in, I'll literally just allow ping, and that's it. And I'll turn on those firewall rules, and I'll stick with those until I have my, my more advanced firewall rules. So I did the domain controller CCDC, so I write basic firewall rules to allow DNS and a few other things out. And it's okay if these firewall rules stop scoring for one of your services. It's always better to have a little bit of downtime in the beginning than have a ton of downtime, an hour or two left of the competition, because red team is just completely wrecked your box and you can't get it back. So I always think it's better to do that than, you know, have to deal with it later. So, you know, create some basic firewall rules, have some, you know, block them out for a little bit and kind of just like take a breath and then like, you know, start typing your regular firewall rules. If you're a client, allow connections to the domain controller. If you're a domain controller, allow people to connect to you, and you'll get those settled and get those, you know, firewall rules really tight. After that, I like to start doing like IR stuff, so like auditing users with like net user and net group, net local group. If you're on a client, make sure you're checking the local group and not the domain controller group. If you're on the domain controller, just check the, you know, domain admin, enterprise admin groups. And then after that, I like to usually move to system internal tools. So again, I said I usually start with Process Explorer. I think Process Explorer is a great way to start and just kind of, you know, looking at the processes on the system and getting a good idea of what's running on the system to kind of get a feel for things. And then kind of like 5 minutes after I'm looking at processes, I usually like to jump to auto runs and kind of get a good feel for like, okay, is there any registry persistence? Like what, kind of what low-hanging fruit does Red Team have for me? In CCDC, there's not usually a ton of low-hanging fruit. It's usually more hidden. They try to stay a lot more hidden for the second day so they can really wreck you on the second day. But a lot of times at like RITSEC and stuff, Red Team will be a lot more friendly and give you like low-hanging fruit that you can easily fix. And so that way you're just kind of working through that kind of stuff. So, but yeah, after that, it's kind of just down to whatever you want to do. If you guys, if your team has a specific strategy you want to implement, or you want to like, you know, back up services on, you know, a different box or get a secondary domain controller going, you know, do that. I think that's always great. You know, auditing logs, event viewer, firewall logs is always really great. But yeah, at that point, it's kind of more free form and whatever you feel is like most important. Obviously, a lot of times in the competitions, I didn't really talk about injects at all, but you're gonna have to balance a lot of these tasks and a lot of these, you know, looking for IR and other stuff for injects. So you're gonna have to balance those two because injects are really important. So when you guys are in RITSEC, please don't give up on injects or don't just like treat injects like they're, you know, not important, because they really are, and they'll win you the competition if you do all your injects. So definitely recommend that. But anyways, do you guys have any questions based on what I talked about? Because I think that's all I have for you guys today. So I know I threw a lot at you guys. Cool. Hey, Ben, anything else to add or anything I missed?
So I remember when I was racing the CCDC team a year ago. I won't say who, but I saw they only had one account.
That was me.
I didn't want to say that.
I'll admit to it.
Russ only had one account on the box, so I changed the password and then I logged him out, and that's it. Russ was logged out of his box indefinitely. I was going to make him sync together to get his box back, but it's kind of an important thing. Back accounts are important. So are backdoors, so to speak, that Red Team can't find. Finding another way to your box is also really good. So again, that sticky keys, yeah, Red Team can use it, but so can you if you get locked out of your box. So kind of think crafty. I don't know, it's really good. Shameless plug-in for myself. HoldMyBeer.xyz, the first post is how to use system kernels in Empire. If you guys don't know, I Red Team and I use Empire, so I'm telling you exactly how to find me and kick me out of the box. So it goes through everything Russ just said. So.
Yeah. Yeah, well, Ben has a lot of great resources on his blog for blue teamers, so definitely check that out. Other than that, yeah, I remember like one funny story is at ISTS the one year, I think it was like last year, not this year, but like last year. The one like red teamer and blue teamer were literally battling over the domain controller by both like using Eternal Blue to like pop their box. So like one would get system and like change the password, then the other one would get system and change the password. So it was like this battle of like who could exploit the box faster and change the passwords. So you know, sometimes you have to be a red teamer to get back in your box, and hopefully it doesn't happen. And hopefully using, you know, having your 5-minute plan and everything set, you know, you're going to be good to go, and you won't have to do that. But you know, when push comes to shove, you got to do what you got to do. So definitely good advice to, you know, sometimes you've got to be a red teamer and get back into your box. So, but yeah, that's all I have for you guys today. Thank you guys for listening. Good luck, and make sure hopefully you download the VM. By the way, if you didn't, start to download for the VM now. So it's on Workplace. So anyways, thank you guys. What's up?
hard challenge for this week is creating a 5-minute plan, but you can do it for either Windows or for Linux, because then you can bring the script and run this at IRSEC. The whole point of it is prepping for IRSEC, and you can